everyone, welcome to my art room. I'm so glad you're here today. I am going to do another Color Cube series painting today. This is from the Color Cube Volume 1 by Renee Clark. And today's color palette is number 12. It's super bright and vibrant. These are beautiful colors. There are a lot of very primary kind of colors. So this palette is really easy to mix. So the yellows and the reds would make an orange. The yellows and the blues will make more green. The blues and the reds will make a purple. So to keep this palette really authentic, I have to be very careful about how I lay the color down. But it's a beautiful palette and it's a very vibrant, lovely picture. So my colors today, dark blue. I'm going to be using Payne's Gray. This is a Lucas Krill Studio paint. Really love Lucas Krill. For my hunter green, I've got this earth green. It's not quite right. This has maybe some more blue, so it leans just ever so slightly away from green into turquoise, but it's a good choice, so I'm going to use it. And for my apple green, I have this sap green, which is definitely on the darker end of the apple. I don't really have anything lighter, but I can add white if I want to. For mustard, which of course there's mustard. If anyone has been following my Color Cube series, mustard appears in just about every color palette. Renee Clark must love this color mustard because it's always included. I don't have a really good mustard. This sample color leans slightly gold. So I mixed my own mustard. This is dioxazine purple and I think Hansa yellow. And I mixed it in this tube, which was a mistake, but I just squirted the paint in, so it's a very narrow opening. And so I wasn't really able to stir it or shake it all completely mixed, but this is a really good color match for mustard, and I'm very happy with it. And for scarlet, we've got vermilion. So some very similar colors in this palette that we've seen in some of the previous palettes, but yeah, it's still really fun. I love it. We're going to give it a try. Check out the Color Cube. They have lots of fun palettes to choose from. So today I'm going to be working in this mixed media pad. Well, I've pulled a paper out of this mixed media pad. It's a Fabriano paper, but I bought it at Hobby Lobby. That's the Master's Touch brand. It is 17 by 14 and 110 pounds. So it'll do quite well with all of my paint, but it will probably warp a tiny bit. What I've done is taped off my paper using some artist tape. So I haven't sealed the edges. I have a video on how to make perfect borders every time. And I haven't done that to this paper just because I want to start painting and get going. And that will take a little extra prep work. So I've pressed down the edges as well as I can, and hopefully there's no bleeding, but if there is, this is just a fun practice. This is not, I'm not trying to create pieces that I can sell or necessarily even gift, but I don't know, maybe they'll turn out amazing, and that's exactly what I'll do. So join me as we go through this process, and let's see what we create today. So I'm going to get started here with my Neocolor II crayons. These are water soluble. I love the pigment payoff on these colors. They're fun, they're easy to use. It gets my hand moving and my eyes moving, and I like it because it will add some color and some fun, and then it gives me something from that blank white paper to react to as I build my layers up. These are all quite bold colors, and they're going to be really fun to work with today. So I'm just creating some repeating shapes, and then I mimic them down here again in the circles. And then, I don't know, this is like a wonky flower. And because these are water soluble, I'm going to use this fixative. And if you've watched some of my videos over the last couple of weeks, I've been using this fixative and trying to figure out how to use it, because it's a little bit trickier than the fixative that I normally use, and I'm not successfully applying it yet. But it did all right, and it didn't matter if these colors moved ultimately because these are the bottom layers. So I was just showing you on the bottle. I didn't realize when I purchased this particular sap green from Lucas Krill that it was a fluid paint. I just assumed it was like, you know, your normal acrylic, your heavy body, like the other ones. So I hadn't paid close enough attention, and so it's quite liquid. So here I'm just coming in with my greens to lay down the background, and I've mixed some of the colors together. I've also mixed with white, and I'm just creating a variety of green shades. I'm using my color scraper to move the paint around. I really love using the color scraper with the acrylic paint because you can get it quite thin, and so you can see that even though there's a high color payoff with the green, I can still see through to some of those other layers. And I'm going to let that dry. I'm trying to show you that this is an M5 or 5M Posca pen. It's one of their bigger ones. And this is a navy blue. So while I let this green layer dry, I decided to go ahead and do some more mark making. And again, these marks I anticipate will be mostly in the background. So I'm not too concerned about what I'm doing. I'm not being overly careful like I might with some final mark making. So I'm just creating some fun and interesting shapes and putting some dots. I mean, most of my doodles are dots and lines. I'm not a great doodler. I don't have amazing doodle skills. Every once in a while I'll watch a video on like Zen doodling, and I think, wow, that's like really impressive. That's beyond my doodling skills. So most of my doodles are circles or squares. They're lines and dots and repeating patterns. So it's pretty simple. This recurring arch theme, though, is going to, I'm going to use it throughout this process, even though here at the beginnings I hadn't, thought through that, like, oh, this is going to be a theme for these paintings. I was just doing what came naturally, what felt normal, what felt right. But you'll see in the end, these repeating arch patterns end up in every one of the paintings. In their final layer, you can see some sort of repeating arch. And this is my Payne's gray. So that green is basically dry. It's mostly dry if it's not completely dry. So I'm just here adding my second layer of paint to build on the Posca markers. The blue in the color palette is more primary blue, and I chose the Payne's gray to be darker so I would have a really nice dark color in there. You'll see later that I do bring in more of that primary blue to brighten things up. The colors I've chosen are all very kind of dark to mid-tone values, and so I try repeatedly throughout the process to lighten them, to bring some white, some lighter tones. Here I've just added some white to that Payne's gray, but because it's Payne's gray, it does bring out the gray more than the blue here. But that's okay. These are early layers. And this is still just fun. When you create abstract art, those early layers are just fun layers. And the wonderful thing about abstract art is you can just keep adding layers until you like the final product. There's no clear ending point. If you're working on canvas, it does get tricky because then you start to lose the canvas texture if you have lots and lots of layers, because the acrylic is a plastic. But on paper, you can just keep adding layers to your heart's delight. I did consider at these beginning stages that I might add some collage pieces. I ended up not doing that, but I did decide to use this stencil, and this is Circle Matrix by Cat Rains. I bought this from Joggles, and that will be listed in the description box below if you want to look for that later. It is kind of like Punchinella. When I bought it, I was hoping the circles would be smaller. I wanted really small circles, but this is still a really fun stencil, and I've used it quite a lot. So here I've let the blue dry, and now I'm adding the yellow on top. And I add white to the yellow as well, just to get a little bit of a variety. So there's different colors of yellow. It's not always the same. And I let that dry as well. And now I'm going to add my red in on top. So again, letting the yellow dry so that I don't create orange. Not that there's anything wrong with orange, but I'm just trying to really stick to those colors that are in the Color Cube palette. And here I've added white, but of course we all know that when you add white to red, you get pink. And so I realized that was the wrong move and scratched some of that out. So it's got some interesting texture now and some interesting lines for me to paint on top of. And that's the beauty of acrylic. If you put down something you don't like, you just let it dry and you can paint over it. You can wipe it out with water. Acrylic is very forgiving. So here I'm coming in with titanium white, and I'm just trying to create some interesting shapes. I have a lot of, sort of random blobby shapes, and I have those circles now. And so I'm just trying to think through what might be interesting to look at. And so now I'm taking my color shaper and scratching out some of that paint. So I ended up with 2 lines. And here I am with the mustard. And again, I'm just mimicking kind of that shape I already created with the white. And I'm just doing it now down here with the yellow. This is a stencil. These are a couple of stencils that I've made using hot glue. I just laid the hot glue down and let it dry on a heat resistant surface. And yeah, it created some interesting shapes. So I decided to try and see what would happen if I use them as a stencil to paint through, and would the resulting shapes be interesting. It was totally an experiment. I've never done this before. I've used these in gel printing, and to mixed results. And so here I'm trying to use them as a painting stencil. And the first one worked out pretty good. I was really happy with that. It didn't stamp well afterwards. So there's a lot of paint left on my stencil that didn't get onto the paper. So that was kind of unfortunate. But here I'm trying it again. And these are just lines I went back and forth with the glue gun when I made this stencil. And so I'm just going to try to see if I can get some interesting marks. And I do. And here is the last one I'm going to use. Again, this is just hot glue that I've dried. And I'm going to see if I paint into these squares. Again, just experimenting, just having fun, letting my imagination explore ideas and see what the result is. If I hate it, then I haven't lost anything. I've learned that something didn't work or I didn't like the result, and I can always, like I said, paint on top of this. And if nothing else, I've had fun and it's been a creative process. Sometimes I feel like I have to create like a quota of ugly art in order to finally make some really beautiful, interesting art. So here I decide to use my gel print as a stamp, and I'm going to paint. I'm going to try it again. I'm determined to get this to work. I'm going to paint down in. I'm using this as a stencil so that when I remove this little art shape, I'll have some interesting lines left that I can stamp onto my paper. And if you do this, just press lightly because you don't want to squish the paint down onto your paper. You want it to, kind of keep its shape. And I thought this worked really well. I was quite happy with this actually. And here I'm getting this my third print, and I'm going to take a fourth. And the fourth one wasn't great, but it was okay. So then I decide I like these repeating art shapes, and I'm just going to paint it onto my gel print or gel plate and use that as a stencil. And because I've laid it on flat with the paintbrush, I can press harder as opposed to when I painted through that stencil, the paint was quite thick. So then you just want to be careful not to smash it. And again, I'm getting, there's 4, this is 5, left a tiny bit of mark. I was very happy with that. So I'm not happy with this bottom one here. I don't remember now specifically what was making me unhappy about it, but I decided to come in with green and paint the majority of it out. I can't tell you why I made that decision. It was just in the moment, I felt like that was the right decision to make, and so I did it. And then I decided I wanted to add some more green, but I don't paint it out completely. And here's even some more green. I think I added some glazing medium to this because it's coming quite thin as I stretch it with that color shaper. So I start getting frustrated. This is that middle stage in abstract art where it is a mess. It is 100% a mess. It's chaotic. I haven't quite caught a vision for any of these paintings. I like a lot of the elements that are in them, but I don't know what I'm trying to achieve. And I don't feel like I have a good direction. So this is sort of that middle era of painting, and I'm getting frustrated and I'm getting kind of angry. I mean, watching myself move, I can tell that these are like angry movements. Like I'm really frustrated. I'm taking it out on the artwork itself, trying to figure out what I want these pieces to become. And I'm not trying to create anything necessarily recognizable, but I do want to feel like the pieces come to a completion, that there is a balance and a reason for the shapes that I have, whether they feel realistic in any way or not. This could be abstract in the sense that it's something from real life that I've just created and made it wonky, but it can also, abstract art can be non-representational, which means it has no reference to the real world at all. It is literally just color and texture and shapes, and looking at those colors and textures and shapes evoke a feeling. So I don't know which ones these are going to be, whether it's non-representational or whether it's going to be something abstracted. But regardless, I'm getting more and more frustrated at this point in the painting. I did decide that I liked the red, which is now why I'm coming back with the vermilion to kind of solidify those marks and make them more dominant. But I still don't feel like I'm achieving what I want to achieve. So a lot of artists, will start with at least an inspiration piece in mind, and that gives them a direction. And sometimes I do that. Most of the time I don't, but I do think that probably is a good idea. Whether you stay true to your initial inspiration or you veer off as you create, starting somewhere with an idea is probably a good idea. So here I took a break. In fact, it was a couple of days. I let the paint completely dry, and then I decided it was too much chaos to look at on one big sheet, and I've cut them each into individual squares, and I'm going to work on them now individually. There's a little bit of white here once it's dried that I think needs to be removed. So I'm just going to paint over that, and I'm going to lean into this green that I've moved. It's like 3/4 of the paper nearly. And so I just decided to lean into it and see what will happen. So from here on, what I'm really spending most of my time doing is sort of clarifying. I'm filling in gaps. I'm making things a little bit more neat, and I bring my color card down to look for inspiration. So I feel like I'm missing the yellow out of this palette. And so I start with these dots, and I'm not sure because they're quite bright against that green. And so you can see I'm rubbing them out. But as I continue, I become more comfortable with them, and I realize, no, I do like the brightness. And so I put them on and I let them be. And I add them in a couple of places, and I stretch them out so that there's some interest, and let that dry. So I move on, and I've got my color card again so that I can see what is really missing the most or what is working well. And so here I've decided to, again, just clean up this red that I've already got in place. So I'm just going to fill it in and clean up some of the edges. I don't paint over everything completely because the layers make it very interesting to look at, especially up close, when you can look in there and see, oh, there's something behind this red that's on the top. And here I'm coming in. I think this is Titan Buff, or I'm sorry, Titan, what is it? It's the white, titanium. There we go, titanium, with a tiny bit of the mustard mixed in so that it just warms up that white a little bit. And you can see I'm clarifying the shapes and cleaning up some of the edges, but not all of them. This one I feel confused about. I put these dark, bold red squares in, which I'm now clarifying. And it looks like I've added a tiny bit of white. And yet they kind of are overpowering. So I struggle a little bit with what to do with these bold red squares. They do make it to the end. And I think it's okay. So this is back to that navy Posca. And I'm going to smear it out. So then now you can see that bright blue that I'm missing. And I didn't really realize I was missing it until this moment. And seeing it next to those bright, colorful birds, I realized that I am missing the brightness of that blue. So I'm just using some water to kind of remove some of the paint. And I'm coming back in. It's the same. It's the titanium white mixed with a tiny bit of that mustard yellow. And again, just clarifying those shapes. These start to remind me of water ringlets. Maybe like it's water and someone threw a rock in, and it ripples outwards. Or it could be an abstract waterfall, but it starts to really put me in mind of water. And here I'm coming in with my Neocolor II crayon because I know it's water soluble, and I'm just adding water to it, which is going to give me a very watercolor wash kind of finish. And I'm filling the blue, so I'm leaning into it. I'm just rubbing out some of the water because I was, I used water to spread the paint, and so the crayon. I'm just gonna take some out and rough it up a little bit. Go in between the lines. This one I start liking. It starts feeling better. I'm not at the end yet, but I start feeling better about it. And I'm just showing you here that I'm using my smaller Posca pen. So this one is the 1M, so it's a much finer tip. And because that blue wasn't completely dry, if you add yellow to blue, what happens? Let's remember color mixing 101. So these marks I'm making here do kind of lean towards green, but I decided it was okay because I have that like apple green is part of the palette, and I can always come back and add more yellow on top once it's dry. But yeah, I'm starting to get, I feel better about this. So I'm gonna let that one dry. This one still looks a mess. So I decide to brighten up the yellow. That mustard is a good match, but it dried very dull. So here I'm just using my Posca to brighten the yellow up, which I really like. So I'm just going to add more. And I'm adding color into, that's the stencil that I had used. And so I'm just filling in the circles and brightening up that yellow. And you can still see some of those early marks I made with the navy Posca in the early layers, which I think is fun. And because I really enjoyed the blue, I've got some blue crayons out again. I'm using 2 different colors of blue. I'm just going to fill in a big section of color and make it blue. Which I think really works. It works for the piece. It helps to create, and oh, I'm trying the fixative again. Because it won't matter if this blue runs together. But I do want to kind of clean up the edges. I keep trying with that fixative. I still haven't found the most successful way to use it. As you're going to see here in a minute, I'm adding now just some lines. Just feels like it needs something over here on this side of the page. I'm using both my blues and no water. But when I spray it, it makes a huge mess. So I'm still learning. If you use this fixative and you use it with Neocolor II crayons or other water-soluble products, I mean, let me know what I'm doing wrong, guys, because it's not working for me the way I think it should work. So here, I like the painterly style that these crayons are giving me. And so this one I do activate with water to spread out. But it's giving me a nice color. It's adding another layer. And this one I'm really happy with in the end. It's quite simple, really. It's probably the most subdued of all of the paintings. And this one I'm quite happy with in the end. And here I decide to just add some random marks. I started by making lines and then I realized I needed some circles. And this is again just water. I'm activating those marks so that some of them will stay and some of them will blend. And it just creates something very interesting. Once you're really close to the painting, you can see those marks. When you're far away, you might not distinguish too much beyond this is a big green section, but up close you can see them. So that just makes it more interesting to the viewer. So I'm happy with this one. It's moving in the right direction. This one needs help and I'm trying my best here. I'm going with what has been successful in some of these other little paintings. I'm using the crayon and the water to add another layer. And here I'm spraying with the fixative again. I'm trying. I need some help with that fixative. So this is what it's done. It's just been sitting off to the side drying, but it smeared all of those lines. It just, the fixative just spread out and made a mess. So I'm gonna let that dry some more. And I decide these are done. Maybe they're not the most beautiful, perfect pieces of art I've ever made, but I've been struggling now with these for 2 days. And I'm showing you here that you can keep your tape paint and use it as washi tape. But like I said, I've been struggling now with these for 2 days and I'm ready to be done. They've gotten to a point that I'm happy with them. I don't know what else I would add. So that's one of the reasons I feel like they're done. And I've trimmed now the edges so they're all the same. And I have these completed works of art. And those smudged blue lines turned out kind of cool. They added an interesting element that I hadn't predicted. So I'm grateful for that. That's one of the things I love about making art is the surprises when you use products and things maybe don't work the way you think they're going to work. This one turned out to be my favorite. I want to call it something like sitting by the dock of the bay. That already belongs to something else, but it feels to me like it's some chairs in the summertime sitting by a lake with a red dock in the background. It's my favorite. I do like all of these. I think they were successful in the end, but the palette itself was a little bit challenging for me. I'm going to spray them with this workable fixative, which I know how to use and I trust, and I'm going to finish them with a varnish. I haven't decided which, but I definitely want the satin finish on them. And this is some of the tape that I kept. This is just on copy paper, and I can use these now in other artworks, or I can use them. You can use washi tape for lots of different things, but now this is just washi tape that I've created. So thanks for being here with me today. Thanks for, if you made it to the end, like gold star to you. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks so much for being here.